What do we got up here first, Parker?
We're jumping right into the sound check here. Let's go to Song of the Week, which I think you have, Jason.
This week's song, Welcome to the Fold. Artist, Filter, Rock Fan Radio's Song of the Week.
I actually have a good one for Song of the Week this week. So 1999, August 1999, the band Filter drops their second album. For me, this was a big deal in my life back in the day. Filter had just dropped their first album, Short Bus, which, and if you don't know anything about Filter, Richard Patrick is the front man of Filter. He actually comes from Nine Inch Nails. And I don't say comes from Nine Inch Nails. He was one of the musicians working with Trent Reznor when Nine Inch Nails was getting going. You can actually see Richard Patrick in the Wish video, which we talked about Song of the Week last week. And I guess Richard Patrick said, I want in on more of the action. You know, Trent, you're doing all the stuff. And Trent Reznor turned to him and he said, great, go start your own band then. So Richard Patrick did exactly that. He released Short Bus. Of course, Hey Man, Nice Shot was the big single off of that one. But then when it was time for the second record, you know, for me, the sophomore record is always what tells you is a band going to be able to stay or not. You got your whole career to write one record. And then the second one, you only have about a year or two. So it really tests if they can do it. They dropped Title Record, and Welcome to the Fold is the first track off of it. It's also the opening track. I picked this song, you know, I really picked this song because I heard it the other day and I started thinking about, this is a metalcore song. I mean, you listen to Title of Record for where we were in the 90s, where we had a lot of the 90s hits. You know, we got
You could do so. You want.
Third Eye Blind on the radio. We've got all these poppy bands that were all over the pop hits. But then you had other bands that were going the other direction coming out of the grunge thing. And Filter was one of them with their little bit of industrial edge. They released Welcome to the Fold. And I think everybody went, holy crap, I've never heard anything like that. Or especially not in the radio's play that they were getting. And so I put it on. I loved it. It's an 8-minute song. And technically it's like 4 songs all at once. It starts out with different phases of the song as it kind of goes in and out. It's got screams. It's got the big choruses like the metalcore stuff does today. And I think the biggest thing out of all of it is this was before the 7 and 8 strings and 9 strings got all really super popular. And Filter went from a drop D setting, which is a lower setting on a standard guitar, to a drop A setting to make it even lower, which a lot of bands weren't doing back then. Now it's kind of the norm for everything you're going to hear on the radio. And Filter did it first. So I got interested. I did some research about Welcome to the Fold. I'm like, I wonder if this ever gets cited as one of the first metalcore songs or as an influencer. They were influenced. I could find none of it. So my theory wasn't right. But I still think it's interesting because it's definitely them moving with the times. And this is kind of a point where I'm seeing it go from more radio friendly and evolving more into the metalcore metal stuff that we see today. And for that, salute you, Richard Patrick. It was awesome. Got to see you over the summer. It was really good. And also a sleeper at Louder Than Life. They will be there. I definitely recommend you go check it out. You're definitely going to know some of their songs. The one I think it's a Dawson's Creek song. If you want to take my picture, they're definitely going to play that one. They're definitely going to play Hey Man, Nice Shot, and they're definitely going to play Welcome to the Fold. So that's our song of the week.
I was fortunate enough to actually see that song performed in a different band. We've talked about him before. Richard Patrick was in a side project called Army of Anyone, and I was lucky enough to see that.
I'm glad you said it.
Love that band. I wish they would do more stuff, but you know, I get it. The other guys are in projects, but they actually opened up for 3 Days Grace on a tour. They came through Indy, the only tour they did, and they actually played that song, which was very cool. I was really glad I got to hear that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did they do any other Filter or STP songs?
They did. They did Hey Man, Nice Shot, and then they did Piece of Pie and Cracker Man with Stone Temple Pilots.
Nice. That's awesome.
Because that was the DeLeo brothers were the guitar players in that band, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I heard them on the radio. I bought their album, and like I said, I'm the same way. I wish they would have did a lot more, but you know, obviously, Stone Temple Pilots are still out there doing their thing, you know, with a different front man. And Filter obviously is still touring.
When Title of Record came out, I actually was living down in Champaign, which is about 2.5 hours south of Chicago, University of Illinois, where I was living. And me and my wife drove up to Chicago to see the Title of Record tour. When it came through, I was so into that album. It had to be out of the year 2000, probably 99, 2000. And just real quick, I got to mention who the openers were. The openers were Chevelle when they were still on the Christian label Squirt, and they only had one album out.
It's a good name.
The other opener was another Chicago band that I can't come up with the name yet, but kind of actually I had it right here. Smoking Popes was the other opener. So Smoking Popes and Chevelle, very cool show.
I remember the
Like,
first time.
Filter's like industrial rock, right? In my mind, it's not as heavy. But when you nominated this song, I went to listen to it. I'm like, there's no way this is Filter. This is Filter at their absolute heaviest. And I really enjoyed this song.
Yeah, it's cool. And like when I first met you, Parker, I remember introducing you to Filter. You've never heard him before. And I was like, what? You've never heard of Filter? But I guess that's what a 10-year age gap does.
So I was in high school when Title Record came out, and believe it or not, Welcome to the Fold was my walk-up song playing baseball, the intro to it, when it kicks it in. So
that's a great choice.
So
Beautiful.
that was a great band. They played Louder in Life, I think it was 2 years ago, and they were the first main stage band to go on. So we had that hurricane come through Friday that pushed everything back. They were the first band to come on Saturday, gates open a little bit late. And I just remember walking through the crowd, and it was still drizzling enough, and I was, we camped down there, so obviously we had a couple drinks before we went in, and I was freaking dancing through the crowd just as they were playing that. And when you talk about take my picture, take a picture, I growing up in Philadelphia, I remember a lot of the soft rock radio stations started playing that in heavy rotation, along with Incubus's Drive and Finger Eleven's One Thing. All kind of came out like that same year in genre. So it was kind of funny hearing some of these, hearing hard rock stations in Philly playing the harder stuff, and hearing like the soft rock station, they would literally hear Madonna and Celine Dion on, also playing, Filter, Incubus, and Finger 11 all back to back to back. But that's kind of where, we talk about those late 90s, early 2000s. So Brett and I were big new metal fans. And Filter also had a little bit of that, that industrial metal, that new metal kind of sound too. So really was a perfect blend and a perfect time for that kind of release, what that genre was really picking up. That kind of post-grunge, new sound needed.
Yep, totally. I always, like, back in the day, I put them in the category with, like, Gravity Kills and Stabbing Westward, where it's, like, just barely touch the industrial side and a killer rock band.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.